The astral surveyor drifted silently through the void, its sensors probing the depths of unexplored space. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display, showing an unusual energy signature emanating from a nearby system. After 20 years of deep space exploration, humanity had yet to encounter intelligent alien life. That was about to change. "Captain, we're picking up artificial structures in orbit around the third planet," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, his fingers dancing across the neural interface. They're massive. Each one appears to be at least 30 kilometers in length. Sarah's heart raced, but her voice remained steady. Configuration: unknown design, but definitely not natural. There's some kind of energy field connecting them. Wait. Rodriguez's voice dropped. "We're detecting multiple ships approaching. Their energy signatures are completely foreign to our database." The bridge crew maintained their composure, years of training kicking in despite the historical significance of the moment. Humanity's first contact with an alien civilization was about to occur, and Sarah Chen would be the one to handle it. The approaching vessels were elegant, their hulls seeming to shimmer with an iridescent quality that defied human engineering. As they drew closer, the ship's AI translated the incoming transmission. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted space. Power down your systems and prepare for inspection." Sarah straightened her uniform. "Open a channel. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth exploration vessel Astral Surveyor. We are a peaceful expedition from Earth, seeking contact with other civilizations." The response came swiftly, but not from the approaching ships. A new vessel emerged from behind the orbital structures, its design markedly different. The voice that responded carried an unsettling mixture of amusement and contempt. "Earth vessel, you have the honor of addressing Overseer Salthrak of the Triarchy. Your arrival has been anticipated." Sarah's tactical officer, Commander Patel, whispered urgently, "Captain, their weapons are armed but not targeting us. Multiple energy signatures suggest they could disable us instantly if they wanted to." "Overseer," Sarah replied carefully, "we're honored to make first contact. Our mission is one of peaceful exploration and scientific discovery." A low chuckle echoed through the communication channel. Yes, that's what they all say at first. But let us dispense with the pleasantries. Your species has achieved faster than light travel, which means you are now subject to evaluation by the Triarchy. Prepare to receive our delegation." Before Sarah could respond, 3 crystalline pods materialized on the bridge. The security team's weapons were drawn instantly, but the pods had already opened to reveal 3 distinctly different alien forms. The first was tall and serpentine, with multiple arms and gleaming scales. The second appeared almost mechanical, though clearly organic, with compound eyes that analyzed everything simultaneously. The third was humanoid but wrong somehow, its proportions suggesting evolution under crushing gravity. "I am Salthrak," the serpentine being announced. "With me are representatives Valco and Meridix. We are the voices of the Great Three, the shepherds of this galaxy's destiny." Sarah maintained her diplomatic posture, though every instinct screamed danger. "We welcome you aboard the Astral Surveyor, though I must note that materialization without permission is generally considered hostile in our culture." Zelthrak's inner eyelids flickered in what might have been amusement. "Your cultural considerations are noted but irrelevant. We are here to explain your new reality. The galaxy operates under our guidance, Captain. Every spacefaring race eventually comes to understand this." The mechanical-appearing Valco stepped forward, its voice a harmonic blend of tones. "Our scans indicate your vessel's capabilities exceed preliminary projections. Your species has developed along interesting lines. Interesting enough to warrant immediate assessment," Meridix added, its dense form causing the deck to creak slightly. "We've observed your world from afar. A death world, by most standards, yet you thrived. Such resilience has value." Sarah's mind raced, processing the implications. Assessment for what purpose, exactly? For your place in the grand design, Southrak replied. Some species serve through their strength, others through their intellect. All contribute to the harmony we have maintained for millennia. Commander Patel's hand hadn't left his weapon. You're talking about subjugation. Such an ugly word, Valco chittered. We prefer directed evolution. Every species needs guidance to reach its full potential. The Great Three provide that guidance. Sarah stepped forward, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's history. With respect, Overseer, humanity has its own path. We're not looking for guidance, only peaceful cooperation and trade. The temperature in the room seemed to drop as Southrak's expression shifted to something predatory. You misunderstand, Captain Chen. This is not a negotiation. It is an announcement. Your species will be evaluated, categorized, and assigned its proper role. Resistance would be unfortunate. The last species that resisted took 3 centuries to recover. Meridix rumbled. We would prefer to avoid such waste with humanity. Sarah stood her ground, though her mind was already formulating contingencies, and if we choose to simply return to Earth and avoid further contact. The 3 aliens exchanged looks that needed no translation. Southrak's voice carried an edge of steel beneath its silky tones. That option no longer exists. You have seen us. You know of us. The protocols are clear. In that moment, Sarah Chen realized she wasn't just making first contact. She was witnessing the first shots of an inevitable conflict. Humanity had dreamed of finding others among the stars. Instead, they had found an empire of control and subjugation. We'll need time to communicate this to our government, she said carefully. You have 3 standard rotations, Valco announced. We will return for your species' answer. Choose wisely, Captain Chen. The grace of the Great Three is not unlimited. The aliens vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving behind only a lingering chill and the weight of their ultimatum. Sarah turned to her crew, seeing in their eyes the same determination she felt. Send everything we've recorded to Earth, she ordered, and prepare for emergency jump procedures. Something tells me humanity's age of exploration just became a fight for survival. As the astral surveyor's engines hummed to life, Sarah Chen knew that the galaxy was about to learn a crucial lesson. Humans don't take well to ultimatums, and they never, ever submit to tyranny. 6 months after first contact, the diplomatic vessel Olive Branch hung in orbit around Centauri Prime, humanity's first extrasolar colony. Ambassador Marcus Y paced the conference room, reviewing the data that had been flooding in from their covert surveillance network. What had started as a diplomatic mission had evolved into something far more disturbing. Play the latest intercept, he commanded. The ship's AI projected a series of images showing massive factory complexes on distant worlds. But these weren't ordinary factories. They were processing centers for sentient beings. Dr. Elena Santos, the mission's xenoanthropologist, pointed to specific details in the footage. These facilities are processing newly conquered species for integration into the Triarchy system. The Great Three don't just conquer. They reshape entire civilizations to serve their needs. Marcus studied the horrific imagery. How many species are we talking about? At least 47 confirmed cases of complete subjugation. Elena replied, her voice tight with controlled anger. Each species is modified, both physically and culturally, to fulfill specific roles. Some become warriors, others laborers. The lucky ones become administrative servants. The unlucky. She couldn't finish the sentence. The door slid open, and Commander James Chen, Sarah Chen's brother, entered with fresh intelligence. It's worse than we thought. Our deep space probes have detected massive construction projects throughout Great Three territory. They're building something big, and given the timing, they're preparing for us, Marcus concluded. The 3-rotation deadline they gave Captain Chen was never about getting our answer. They were assessing our capabilities. Elena brought up another hologram, this one showing genetic analysis. The Great Three aren't just 3 species working together. They're the end result of countless integrations. Each of them has incorporated traits from dozens of conquered species. They've engineered themselves into their current forms over millennia. James crossed his arms, which explains their obsession with directed evolution. They see it as their right, their destiny, to reshape other species as they themselves were reshaped. Marcus walked to the viewport, watching as Earth ships conducted joint exercises with the Centauri Defense Fleet. Humanity had been preparing too, but in their own way. Show me the resistance data again. New holograms sprang to life, displaying information about various species that had attempted to resist the Great Three's influence. Most had failed, but the patterns of resistance were telling. Every species fought alone, Alina observed. The Great Three's primary strategy isn't military dominance. It's isolation. They prevent species from forming alliances by playing them against each other. Classic divide and conquer. James pulled up tactical overlays. But they've never encountered a species like us before. Humanity united after first contact, accelerated our expansion programs. We have 5 colonies now, not just Centauri Prime. Our industrial capacity has tripled. And we've done something else they didn't expect. Marcus added, we've been watching, learning, and most importantly, communicating. Alina's eyes widened as she realized what he meant. The underground resistance networks, the supposedly integrated species who still maintain their original cultural identity in secret. Exactly. Marcus activated a secure channel, revealing hundreds of encrypted communications. While the Great Three have been preparing their fleet, we've been building something far more powerful, hope. The room's atmosphere changed as Marcus brought up profiles of resistance leaders from dozens of species. These aren't just random malcontents. They're organized, patient, and they've been waiting for a catalyst. Every species under Great Three control has its own resistance movement, its own dreamers of freedom. They've just never had the means to coordinate. Until now, James said with a grim smile. Our quantum communication network can't be detected or interrupted by Great Three technology. We've given the resistance something they've never had before. A way to talk to each other. Alina studied the data with growing excitement. The Great Three's entire system of control is based on keeping species isolated and dependent. If these resistance movements could coordinate their efforts, it would be chaos, James finished. The kind of chaos that could bring down an empire. Marcus turned from the viewport, his decision made. The Great Three gave us an ultimatum because they expected us to either submit or fight alone. Instead, we're going to do what humans do best. We're going to change the rules of the game. He activated the ship's secure communication array. Send the signal. Tell all resistance cells. Operation Prometheus begins in 30 days. The chains that have bound this galaxy are about to break. As the message was encrypted and transmitted through the quantum network, Marcus thought about the millions of beings living under Great Three control. They expect us to be just another species to integrate, another civilization to reshape in their image. Instead, we're going to show them what happens when you try to cage humanity. We don't just break free, we free everyone else too. James checked the tactical readouts one final time. The Great Three's fleet movements suggest they'll launch their invasion within the week. They think they're ready for us. They're not, Marcus said quietly. They're ready for a war against humanity. What they're going to get is a revolution. And revolutions have a way of burning even the mightiest empires to the ground. As the olive branch prepared to return to Earth, Marcus looked at the star map showing Great Three territory. Soon, those carefully controlled borders would erupt into flame as dozens of species rose up simultaneously. The greatest empire in the galaxy was about to learn why humans were different, not because of their strength or technology, but because they understood something the Great Three had forgotten long ago. True power comes not from controlling others, but from setting them free. The bridge of the UEA's Defiant hummed with tension as Admiral Sarah Chen watched the tactical display. Hundreds of human ships hung in formation alongside vessels from a dozen resistance fleets. The Great Three had never imagined their carefully controlled slave species could unite like this. All strike teams report ready, Commander Patel announced from his tactical station. Resistance cells across 50 systems are standing by. Sarah nodded, remembering how far they'd come since that first contact 6 months ago. The Great Three expects us to attack their primary military installations. That's why we're not going to. The holographic display shifted, highlighting thousands of smaller targets across Great Three space, processing centers, integration facilities, control nodes, the true backbone of their empire. Phase 1 initiating. The ship's AI announced. Quantum virus deployment in progress. Across the galaxy, the carefully hidden code humanity had planted in Great Three networks activated simultaneously. Their supposedly impenetrable control systems began to crash, one by one. Emergency protocols kicked in, only to find those compromised as well. They're responding exactly as predicted, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. Their automated defense systems are targeting their own control centers, trying to quarantine the virus. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Great Three's greatest strength, their integrated, automated control systems, had become their greatest weakness. Launch Phase 2. All resistance cells are go for primary objectives. Across 50 star systems, carefully planned chaos erupted. Resistance fighters who had waited generations for this moment emerged from hiding. Integration facilities were sabotaged. Processing centers were liberated. The streets of 1,000 worlds erupted in coordinated rebellion. Enemy fleets are attempting to respond, Paddle reported, but their command and control systems are in chaos. They can't coordinate their movements. That's our cue, Sarah announced. All ships, execute jump sequence Delta. Let's show them why you don't underestimate humanity. The combined fleet vanished into hyperspace, only to reappear at precisely calculated points across Great Three space. Instead of concentrating their forces for a decisive battle, they split into hundreds of smaller task forces, each targeting critical infrastructure the Great Three couldn't afford to lose. Incoming transmission, Rodriguez called out. It's Overseer Xalthrak. The serpentine alien appeared on screen, its usual composure shattered. What have you done? Do you realize the chaos you've unleashed? We've done exactly what you feared, Sarah replied calmly. We've shown the species you enslaved that they don't have to submit. That together, they're stronger than your control. You're destroying millennia of progress. Xalthrak hissed. The galaxy needs order, direction, purpose. No, Sarah countered. It needs freedom. The right of every species to choose its own path. Something you forgot long ago when you decided to reshape others in your image. The tactical display showed more Great Three systems erupting in rebellion. Their carefully maintained order was crumbling in the face of coordinated resistance. Ships they had thought thoroughly controlled were turning against them as their crews seized control. Second wave of liberation forces emerging from hyperspace, Paddle reported. The Arcturians have taken their shipyards. The Vex have reclaimed their homeworld. The Sherry mining colonies are in full revolt. Sarah watched as the empire that had dominated the galaxy for millennia began to unravel, not through overwhelming military might, but through humanity's greatest weapon, the ability to unite others in a common cause. You could have been partners, she told the increasingly desperate Xalthrak. Instead, you chose to be tyrants, and tyrants always fall when their subjects realize they outnumber their masters. The Great Three's response fleets were scattered, unable to effectively coordinate without their central control systems. Wherever they managed to concentrate their forces, they found only empty space. The combined resistance fleet had already moved on to their next objectives. Final phase initiating, the AI announced. Transmission broadcasting on all frequencies, across every world, every ship, every facility in Great Three space, a message began to play. It wasn't a demand for surrender or a declaration of victory. It was something far more powerful, the truth about what the Great Three had done to countless species over millennia, and proof that their control could be broken. They're losing control of their integrated species, Rodriguez reported with satisfaction. The genetic modifications they use to ensure loyalty are being overcome by the treatment we developed. Free will is reasserting itself. Sarah watched as the mighty empire of the Great Three crumbled not under the force of humanity's weapons, but under the weight of its own oppression. Send word to all resistance forces. Phase 3 is complete. Begin establishing the Transitional Council for Liberated Worlds. As reports of victory poured in from across the galaxy, Sarah thought about how the Great Three had fundamentally misunderstood humanity. They had seen humans' adaptability and resilience as traits to be harvested and controlled. Instead, those same traits had inspired others to resist, to unite, to fight back. Message from Earth Command, Patil announced. They're asking for a status report. Sarah looked at the tactical display, now showing thousands of liberated worlds throwing off millennia of control. Tell them Operation Liberation was a success. And tell them to prepare for a lot of visitors. We have a galaxy of newly freed species who want to thank humanity for showing them something the Great Three never could. What's that? Rodriguez asked. That the strongest bonds aren't the ones forced upon you. Sarah replied. They're the ones you choose to forge together. The Emergency Council chamber on New Terra was packed with representatives from dozens of liberated species when the first reports of the plague began to arrive. Ambassador Marcus Way watched the holographic displays with growing concern as system after system reported mysterious illnesses affecting multiple species. This is no natural outbreak, Dr. Elena Santos declared, analyzing the data streams. The infection patterns are too precise, too targeted. This is engineered. The room erupted in worried murmurs as representatives realized the implications. The Great Three hadn't been defeated. They'd been preparing their revenge. Preliminary analysis suggests the virus was embedded in the genetic modifications they used to control slave species, Elena continued. It remained dormant until activated by a specific trigger sequence. Marcus studied the spread pattern. They're trying to force the liberated worlds back into dependence. Without their treatments, the modified species will begin to suffer progressive genetic breakdown. The Arcturian representative, their crystalline form shimming with anxiety, spoke up. Many of our people are already showing symptoms. The Great Three claim they alone have the cure. Of course they do, Commander James Chen said bitterly. They're trying to prove their point, that the species they modified can't survive without their guidance. That freedom leads to death. Marcus watched as more systems reported outbreaks. The Great Three's message was being broadcast across all frequencies. Submit again to our authority, and we will save you. Resist, and watch your people suffer. But something wasn't adding up. Dr. Santos, why aren't all modified species being affected equally? Elena's eyes widened as she analyzed the pattern. Because it's not just a virus, it's a test. They're studying how different species react under pressure. The varying mortality rates, the specific symptoms. They're gathering data. They're still experimenting, James realized. Even now, they're trying to perfect their control methods. This isn't just revenge, it's research. Marcus felt a cold anger settle in his chest. The Great Three weren't just trying to reassert control. They were using this crisis to develop even more effective methods of subjugation. We need to show them that humanity didn't just give these species the means to fight, he declared. We gave them the means to survive. He activated the quantum communication network that had helped coordinate the revolution. Attention all liberated worlds. The Great Three believe they can force us back into chains by threatening our lives. They think we'll choose slavery over death. They're wrong. The chamber fell silent as Marcus continued. Humanity faced extinction-level threats before we ever reached the stars. We didn't survive by submitting to them. We survived by working together to overcome them. He turned to Elena. Doctor, you have access to the largest database of cynobiological research ever assembled. Every liberated world has contributed their medical knowledge. Use it. Elena was already coordinating with scientific teams across human space. The Great Three's control was never absolute. There were always individuals who showed natural resistance to their modifications. If we can isolate those genetic factors, we can develop a cure that doesn't require dependence on them. James finished. But we'll need time. Time will buy, Marcus assured him. Because while they expect us to fracture under pressure, to turn on each other in desperation, we're going to do something they've never seen before. He addressed the assembled representatives again. Every world that has a surplus of medical supplies will share with those in need. Every species with natural immunity will volunteer genetic samples. Every scientist who can help will be given whatever resources they need. The Sherry representative, their metallic scales dulled by illness, spoke with quiet determination. You ask us to trust each other completely, to share our most vital resources with former enemies. Yes, Marcus replied, because that's what free people do. We don't survive by hoarding resources or protecting only our own. We survive by standing together. The next few weeks tested that resolve to its limits. As the plague spread, some worlds did consider submitting to the Great Three's demands. But for every moment of weakness, there were a dozen examples of extraordinary cooperation. Arcturian ships rushed medical supplies to Jera colonies. Vex scientists worked alongside human researchers to decode genetic resistances. Species that had been enemies under Great Three rule now fought together against a common threat. When the cure finally came, it wasn't from a single breakthrough, but from thousands of small contributions. The combined medical knowledge of dozens of species, the shared genetic data of millions of volunteers, the coordinated effort of countless researchers, all working together in ways the Great Three had thought impossible. The distribution network is ready, James reported. Every world will receive the cure simultaneously. No one gets left behind. Marcus watched as the cure was deployed across liberated space. The Great Three had tried to use their greatest weapon, the genetic modifications they'd forced upon other species, to reassert control. Instead, they had united the galaxy even more strongly against them. Send a message to the Great Three, he ordered. Tell them their experiment failed. The species they tried to reshape aren't reverting to dependence. They're evolving past the need for masters. As reports of recovery began flooding in, Marcus reflected on the Great Three's fundamental miscalculation. They had spent millennia studying how to control other species, but they had never bothered to study what those species could accomplish when truly free. The plague had been meant to prove that freedom led to chaos and death. Instead, it had proven something else entirely, that the bonds formed by choice were stronger than any chains forged by force. The great hall of Unity Station hung suspended between the stars, its crystalline walls reflecting the light of 1,000 suns. Captain Sarah Chen, now Fleet Admiral, stood before the assembled representatives of the newly formed Galactic Concordat. The Great Three's representatives sat in their designated section, no longer as rulers, but as equals. The age of directed evolution is over, Sarah declared, her voice carrying across the chamber. Today, we forge a different path. The last 6 months had transformed the galaxy. After their plague gambit failed, the Great Three had launched a desperate final offensive. But they found themselves facing not just humanity, but a united front of species fighting for their future. The final treaties have been ratified. Ambassador Wei announced from his position beside Sarah. All species, including the Great Three, will retain sovereignty over their home systems. But no single power will ever again be permitted to control the destiny of others. Exalthrak, now speaking as just one voice among many, rose to address the assembly. You have dismantled the work of millennia. The guidance we provided was never yours to give, Sarah interrupted firmly. Every species has the right to determine its own path. That's not chaos, it's freedom. The evidence of that freedom surrounded them. Species that had been genetically modified were choosing their own futures. Some retained their modifications, others chose to reverse them. but the choice was theirs alone. Dr. Elena Santos presented the final reports from the Xenobiology Council. The forced genetic programs have been completely dismantled. Future modifications will only be permitted with full consent and oversight from the Concordat's Medical Ethics Board. The Arcturian representatives' crystalline forms sparkled as they spoke. And what of the knowledge the Great Three accumulated? The technologies they developed through their experiments will be freely shared. James Chen answered from his position at security control. But with safeguards. Knowledge should illuminate, not control. Sarah watched as species that had once been enemies under the Great Three's rule now worked together, sharing technologies, resources, and ideas. The galaxy was messier now, more complicated, but it was also more alive. There will be challenges, she acknowledged to the assembly. Learning to cooperate as equals after millennia of hierarchy won't be easy, but humanity didn't come to the stars to find perfect order. We came to find partners in the greatest adventure of all, building a future together. The Great Three's representatives shifted uncomfortably as she continued. You sought to reshape species in your image, but life isn't meant to be confined to a single pattern. It's meant to grow, to change, to evolve naturally through cooperation and choice. Across the galaxy, the signs of transformation were everywhere. Former slave worlds were developing their own cultures, blending ancient traditions with new ideas. Trade routes were being established based on mutual benefit rather than forced tribute. Scientific discoveries were being shared openly rather than hoarded for control. The Concordat isn't an empire, Sarah explained. It's a promise that every species has the right to choose its destiny. A promise that we will face the challenges of the future not as masters and servants, but as equals. She gestured to the star field visible through the crystal walls. There are still unexplored regions of space, still mysteries to solve and challenges to face. But we'll face them together, not because we're forced to, but because we choose to. The assembly rose as the Concordat Charter was formally activated. The document wasn't just a political agreement, it was a declaration of principles. Never again would any species be reshaped against their will. Never again would the strong be permitted to determine the fate of the weak. As the ceremony concluded, Sarah found herself standing with Marcus Way and Elena Santos, watching the delegates disperse to begin their new roles. They still don't quite understand us, Elena observed, nodding toward the departing Great Three representatives. They will, Marcus replied. They're learning something we've known all along, that true strength comes from diversity, not uniformity, from cooperation, not control. Sarah smiled as she watched ships from dozens of species departing the station, each heading home to build something new. The Great Three spent millennia trying to perfect their version of galactic order. They never realized that the galaxy doesn't need perfection. What does it need? Elena asked. Sarah gestured to the scene before them. Former enemies working together, sharing ideas, building connections. It needs exactly what humanity has always been best at: the courage to embrace chaos, the wisdom to learn from differences, and the strength to believe that together we can build something greater than any one species could achieve alone. As Unity Station rotated slowly in space, its crystal walls reflected not just starlight, but the dawn of a new era. The age of the Great Three was over. The age of cooperation had begun. And humanity, once targeted for subjugation, had instead become the catalyst for the greatest transformation the galaxy had ever seen. Not through overwhelming force or superior technology, but through something far more powerful: the simple, unshakable belief that every species deserved the right to choose its own path among the stars.